My son told me I wasn't welcome for Christmas, I did not argue. I looked at him, I nodded once, I kept my voice calm. We were in his new house in Boulder, the one I helped him buy when the numbers didn't work. The living room smelled like cinnamon candles. A 12-foot tree stood by the window. Gold ribbon, white lights, not a single crooked ornament. Madison liked things that looked like a magazine. "Dad," my son said, staring at the counter instead of my face, "this year is different. Madison's parents are flying in. They have their own traditions. It might be better if we celebrate later, maybe after the holidays." He said it softly, like soft would make it kind. "Later," I repeated. He swallowed. "It's just easier this way." Madison stood across the room with her phone in her hand. She wasn't typing, she was waiting. If I pushed back, she wanted to be ready. If I stayed quiet, she wanted to watch. I let my eyes move around the room. Hardwood I paid for when the builder upcharged him. Crown molding Madison called non-negotiable. The leather sectional we picked out together when his old sofa felt starter. The Roman shades, the new light fixtures, the framed art over the mantel. I could point to each thing and remember the bill. "You don't want me to come," I said. I kept my tone even so it wouldn't shake. "It isn't that," he said quickly. "It's just Madison's parents like a certain atmosphere. They're formal. They're used to quiet. We don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable." "Anyone," I said. The word tasted like metal. Madison lifted her head. "Jack, it's not personal. It's just family dynamics. We want the evening to feel curated. Curated. Like a gallery. Like a party you planned for pictures." I looked at my son. Not a boy. A man with a mortgage, a job, and a wife who measured life in edges and shine. His face was tight. He wanted me to save him from this, and he wanted me to accept it at the same time. "All right," I said. "Tell your wife's parents I said Merry Christmas." I stood. My knees were stiff. He reached out like he might touch my arm, then let his hand fall. "Dad," he said, "we'll do something the weekend after. Just us." Just us. Like family could be moved around on the calendar the way you move a dentist appointment. I put on my coat and walked past their perfect tree. A photo on the side table caught my eye. Grant and Madison on the beach, her smile wide, her shoulders back. I remember the week that photo was taken. I paid their water bill that month and pretended it was nothing. At the door, I turned. "Be sure to thank your in-laws. I wouldn't want them thinking I'm rude." Madison smiled with only her mouth. "Of course." Outside, the air was clean and cold. The kind of cold that makes your lungs sting and your head clear. The sky was pale blue. The flatirons looked close enough to touch. I walked to my truck and got in. My hands were steady on the wheel. Inside their window, I could see the warm glow of the tree. It looked like a magazine cover, perfect and a little empty. For a moment, I just sat there listening to the heater turn on and off. I thought about my wife, Lydia, and the way she laughed when the string of lights tangled every year. We never had matching ornaments. We had paper snowflakes with pencil lines still showing and a handprint reindeer that never hung straight. It was messy and ours. I started the engine. The dash lights came alive. My face in the windshield looked older than I felt. I did not feel angry. Not exactly. Anger is loud. This was quiet, heavy, something that settles in your chest and decides to stay. I thought about the past 5 years, the automatic transfer that left my account on the 15th, the down payment I pulled from my own home equity, the kitchen remodel that had to happen before Madison hosted her summer group, the new roof, the new floors, the new everything. I paid so they could breathe easy. They breathed so easy they didn't notice the air. I put the truck in reverse and backed out slowly. The tires made a soft sound on the clean driveway. Madison liked clean. No leaves, no grit, no sign that life ever touched the surface. As I turned onto the street, my phone buzzed in the cup holder. I didn't look at it. I drove past houses with lit wreaths and big bows, past lawns with fake reindeer, past a block where every window matched every other window. Boulder's funny like that. Wild mountains on one side, control on the other. Each stoplight felt like a small test. Wait, breathe. Don't let the mind run. Not replay every conversation from the last 5 years. Not yet. I passed the strip mall where I bought Grant his first tool set when he was 8. He used to sit beside me on job sites, handing me screws and asking 100 questions. When he was 12, he told me he'd build me a house one day. I told him I didn't need one. I had one, and it was enough. I turned down my street. The snow from last week still sat in the shady spots. My house looked the same as it always does in winter, plain and good. No light show, a small wreath on the door, the porch light that sometimes flickers, the paint that needs a touch-up in spring. The things I notice because I live here. I parked and cut the engine. The quiet that follows always surprises me. Engines make you think you're moving, even when you're stopped. Silence tells the truth. Inside, the house held that familiar mix of coffee, wood, and the faintest trace of Lydia's favorite soap. It's a funny thing about smell. It keeps time better than clocks. I hung my coat on the hook by the door and stood in the living room with my hands in my pockets. On the mantel, Lydia smiled from her frame. It was a photo from a campsite near Estes Park. Wind in her hair, a paper cup in her hand. She had a way of looking at a camera like she knew a joke you didn't. "I'm all right," I told her. Saying it out loud made it true enough to stand on. I sat on the couch and let the room be quiet. I could feel all the little jobs I've put off since summer. A loose hinge, a sticky drawer, the porch bulb that needs a ladder I don't like to climb without a spotter. The small things you forgive in a house you love, because the big thing, the feeling, is still right. I thought about calling Grant back and asking him one simple question. When did I become a problem to hide? But I knew how that would go. He'd say I'm misunderstood. He'd say I'm sensitive. He'd say it isn't personal. And then he'd ask if I could help with something next month, just until we catch up. I stood, walked to my desk, and opened the top drawer. The folder sat there where I left it. Brown, thick. Inside were 5 years of statements and receipts. Numbers don't lie. They only do what you tell them. My phone buzzed again. I let it. I took the folder out and set it on the desk. I did not open it yet. I just rested my palm on it the way you might lay a hand on a stack of lumber before you cut. Feel the weight. Know what you're about to change. I went to the kitchen and filled a glass of water. Cold, clean. I stood at the sink and looked out at the winter yard. The maple tree was all bone and shadow. The bird feeder was empty. I made a note to fill it tomorrow. Small kindnesses matter when the big ones fall apart. Back in the living room, I picked up the folder again. This time I opened it. I ran my finger down the first page until I found the line I knew by heart. ACH transfer, $2,650. Desert Crest Mortgage. 15th. Every month. Every month. I sat down. I let myself feel it. Not the insult, the pattern. I had trained everyone around me to believe I would fix any hole, cover any gap, soften every landing. I had done it because I thought that was love.
Maybe love is letting people stand on their own feet and decide what to do when they fall. The clock on the wall clicked to the next minute. A small sound. A steady one. I closed the folder and set it beside the phone. I knew the next thing I would do. I also knew I would sleep first. Decisions hold better in the morning. I turned off the lamp, walked down the hall, and pulled the bedroom door halfway shut. The house settled around me. Wood knows how to rest. I lay on my side and stared at the line of light the hallway made on the floor. I listened to my own breath and the heater turning on and off. I let the day loosen. It did, slowly. Tomorrow, I would make one call, and everything would change.
The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The house was quiet except for the low hum of the heater, the kind of stillness that lets you hear your own thoughts. I made coffee, black and strong, and sat by the kitchen window. Outside, the world was silver with frost. I didn't look at my phone. I knew there would be messages, probably from Grant, maybe even Madison, but I wasn't ready for any of that yet. Today wasn't about them. It was about me. I finished my coffee, walked to my desk, and opened the brown folder again. The pages looked the same, but something in me didn't. Last night had burned off something soft. What was left felt clean and steady. I picked up the phone and dialed the number on the back of the bank statement. A woman answered. "Mountain West Credit Union, this is Renee. How can I help you?" "Morning," I said. "I need to cancel a recurring transfer." "Sure thing, sir. What's the account number?" I gave her the numbers, one by one. I could hear her typing in the background. "All right," she said. "This transfer goes out every 15th to Desert Crest Mortgage, account ending in 4398. Want me to pause it or stop it completely?" "Stop it completely." "Effective immediately?" "Yes, ma'am." A few seconds of tapping. Then a voice came back, cheerful. "All set? Anything else I can do for you?" I looked around the room. The old clock ticked on the wall. Lydia's picture caught a bit of light from the window. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe all the way in. "No," I said. "That's everything." When I hung up, the quiet in the house felt different, like the air itself had more space in it. I reached into the folder, pulled out the last few pages, and tore them down the middle. The sound of paper ripping was small, but it felt big. Then I went to the fireplace, struck a match, and dropped the pages in the fireplace. The flames licked up fast, curling the edges, turning black to orange and then to gray. 5 years of servitude, gone in less than a minute. When the last ember died, I poured a glass of water over it and stood there watching the smoke twist and fade. I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't feel sad either. I just felt done. The phone rang a few minutes later. Madison's name flashed across the screen. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times before I answered. "Jack," she said, sounding rushed, "did you cancel the payment?" I did. There was a pause. That's going to cause problems. The mortgage is due in 3 days. I know. Well, we can't cover it right now. You know how the holidays are. We've got expenses. Madison, I said, cutting in. Those are your expenses, not mine. Her voice changed. Excuse me? You heard me. I've been helping for 5 years. That's long enough. You can't just stop. We're family. Family doesn't tell you not to come for Christmas. She took a sharp breath. You're being dramatic. No, I said quietly. I'm being fair. For a second I could hear her breathing hard. Then she hung up. The silence after the call was soft and beautiful. I stood there for a while, looking at the faint smoke still drifting from the fireplace. Then I smiled, poured another cup of coffee, and whispered to myself, Merry Christmas, Jack. That night, I slept like I hadn't in years.
2 days passed. The air outside smelled like snow, the kind that waits on the edge of the clouds before falling. I spent the morning fixing the porch light, one of those small jobs I'd been putting off. It flickered twice before staying steady. Funny how even a light bulb can feel like a victory when your mind is clear. Around noon, my phone rang again. Madison. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. Jack, she said as soon as I answered, skipping pleasantries. You need to listen to me. I didn't answer. Silence has a way of making people tell the truth faster. My parents are flying in this afternoon, she continued. Grant has meetings. I'm busy prepping dinner. Could you do us a favor and pick them up from the airport? For a moment, I thought she was joking. After what you told me last week? I asked. This isn't about that, she said quickly. It's about practicality. You have a truck, you know the airport, and it would just be easier for everyone. Easier, I repeated. She sighed. Jack, don't make this into a thing. You're good at helping. You always have been. Just pick them up at 2 and drive them here. I let the silence stretch. Somewhere in the background I could hear a mixer running, the faint hum of her perfect kitchen life continuing as if nothing had changed. Then I said, calm as ever, Sure, Madison. What's the flight number? She told me. Alaska Air 228, arriving at 2:15. I wrote it down. When she hung up, I set the note on the counter and poured another cup of coffee. At 2 o'clock, I wasn't at the airport. I was in my living room, reading the paper, a record playing quietly in the background. I imagined them landing, waiting, calling, growing restless. I imagined Madison checking her phone again and again, the way people do when control starts slipping through their fingers. By 3, the first call came, then another, then 10 more. I didn't answer any of them. By 5, the knocking started. I saw Madison's car pull up through the front window, her parents right behind her, coats still on, faces red from anger or cold, I couldn't tell. The banging on the door rattled the frame. Jack, Madison shouted, open this door right now. I set my paper down neatly on the table and stood up. When I opened the door, they all pushed inside without invitation. Charles's face was red, his voice louder than it needed to be. What kind of man leaves guests stranded at the airport for hours? An uninvited one, I said. Elaine gasped softly, clutching her purse. You humiliated us. No, I said evenly. I taught you something about humility. Madison's eyes were sharp. You're being cruel. Cruel? I said. You told me not to come to Christmas dinner because you didn't fit your atmosphere. Then you ask me to pick up your guests like hired help. That's not family, Madison. That's a job. Her mouth opened, then closed again. "You've lost it," Charles said, completely unhinged. I stepped closer, my voice low but steady. "No, Mr. Rowe, I finally found it." They stood there in the middle of my living room, angry, embarrassed, and unsure what to do next. I could feel their control slipping, piece by piece. "Now," I said, "you can all leave." Madison looked at her parents, then back at me. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "Maybe, but tonight I'll sleep just fine." I closed the door behind them and locked it. Their footsteps faded down the walkway, muffled by the cold. The silence that followed was perfect. I poured myself a small drink, sat in my chair, and watched the lights outside flicker across the snow. For the first time in years, I felt free. But as I'd soon find out, freedom always comes with a cost.
Didn't expect peace to come so quickly after that night. I thought maybe guilt would find me, or doubt would whisper that I'd gone too far. But when I woke the next morning, the world outside my window was clean, fresh snow, bright light, and a silence that felt earned. I made coffee and sat by the window. My hands didn't shake anymore when I lifted the mug. The phone, sitting face down on the table, had been buzzing since dawn. I didn't need to check it to know who was calling. By mid-morning, I stepped outside to shovel the walkway. The air was sharp, but it felt good. Every scoop of snow seemed to clear more than just the concrete. It cleared something inside me, too. When I came back in, there was a knock on the door. Not loud, not angry. A slow, tired kind of knock. I opened it. Grant stood there. His hair was uncombed and his suit coat looked slept in. The cold had drawn the color from his face. For a long second, we just looked at each other. "Dad," he said finally. His voice cracked on the word. "Morning," I said. "Coffee's on if you want it." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. His shoes left melting prints on the floor. He looked around the room like it was the first time he'd seen it, really seen it. "You kept it the same," he said quietly. "Everything. Didn't have a reason to change it." He nodded, but his eyes stayed on the floor. "They're saying you embarrassed us. Madison's furious. Her parents, they're threatening legal action." I stirred my coffee. "For what? Telling the truth?" He didn't answer. "Sit down," I said. He did. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not in size, but in spirit. The confident man who'd once talked about investments and opportunities had disappeared. "I read everything you handed out, all those records. I didn't realize how much you'd given." "You didn't ask. You just assumed it would always be there." He rubbed his eyes. "Madison said it made you feel needed, that helping us gave you purpose." I almost laughed, but it came out as air. "No, son. Helping people who respect your money gives you emptiness." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "The house is in trouble," he admitted. "We can't make the next payment without your transfers." I nodded slowly. "Then you'll have to figure it out." "Dad, please! We've got nowhere else to go." "You've got plenty of places to go," I said softly. "You just might have to go smaller. Humble, maybe." He didn't speak. The quiet stretched between us, long and heavy. After a while, he said, "Mom would have hated this." I smiled a little. "Your mother would have told me to stop paying long before now." That almost got a laugh out of him. Almost. He stood up finally. "I don't know what to do," he said. "Start by learning to live within what you earn," I said. "It's not punishment, Grant. It's balance. It's how you grow up."
He nodded, eyes glassy. "You're not coming to the house again, are you?" I shook my head. "Not unless I'm invited for the right reasons." He stood there for another moment, his mouth tightening like he wanted to say something else. Then he just said, "Merry Christmas, Dad. Merry Christmas, son." When the door closed behind him, I stayed standing there a while, staring at the snow through the window. It was still falling, soft and slow, covering everything evenly. The poor lawns, the rich lawns, the broken ones, too. It looked, for once, like the world didn't care who owned what. And I liked that. Spring came slower that year. Bolder winters always stretch longer than you think they will, holding on until you're convinced the cold is permanent. But then one morning, the light shifted. The snow melted off the roofs, the birds came back, and everything felt possible again. I was in the kitchen when the letter arrived. A thick envelope, official-looking, the kind that already knows what it's about before you open it. I signed for it at the door and read the first line. Notice of default, final demand for payment. I didn't even have to finish it to know what it meant. Grant and Madison were 3 months behind on their mortgage. $8,400 in arrears. 14 days to bring the account current, or the house would enter foreclosure. I set the letter on the table beside my coffee and stared out the window. The yard was wet with thaw, patches of grass showing through for the first time in months. It should have hurt seeing it written out like that, but it didn't. All I felt was the clean sort of sadness that comes after a wound's already healed. The phone started ringing again within an hour. Grant first, then Madison, then her father, each trying a different number, a different tone. I didn't answer any of them. A week later, Grant showed up at my door. He looked 10 years older. His hair thinned at the temples, his eyes were red, and his voice had that flat tone you only get when life has finally stopped negotiating. "Dad," he said, standing on the porch like a man visiting a stranger, "we need to talk." I opened the door wide enough for him to come in. The first thing he noticed was the paint. "You redid the living room," he said quietly. "Yeah, finally had the time and money." He looked at the new shelves, the clean curtains, the plants on the sill. "It looks good." I nodded. "Feels good, too." He sat down on the couch, elbows on his knees. His suit looked pressed but tired. "They're foreclosing, Dad. We can't keep up. Madison's blaming me. Her parents won't even answer our calls." I let the words hang there. "We lost everything," he said finally. "The house, the savings, our reputation. People we thought were friends won't return messages. The bank said we've got 2 weeks before the auction." I looked at him, my son, the man who once believed success meant shine. His hands were trembling. I remembered those hands when they were small, covered in glue and glitter, building paper ornaments with his mother. He whispered, "I don't know what to do." I took a long breath. I said, "You start over," he said simply. "You learn what matters and what doesn't. You stop trying to live someone else's version of enough." He nodded slowly. His eyes filled, but he blinked hard, refusing to let the tears fall. "I don't deserve your help." I smiled faintly. "That's the first honest thing you said in a while." He looked up, startled. Then I added, "But you've got my forgiveness,
That's what I can give you." His voice broke. "I don't know if I can forgive myself." "You will. Not today, but you will." He leaned forward, hands clasped tight, breathing uneven. "Madison's leaving. She said she didn't marry me for this kind of life." I didn't say good. I just sat back in my chair and let the silence speak for itself. After a moment, he looked around again. "You seem happy, Dad. Peaceful?" "I am," I said. "Turns out peace isn't something you buy. It's what's left when you stop paying for everyone else's comfort." That got a tiny, broken smile out of him. We talked a little longer about the small stuff, the weather, his job search, the way the mountains still looked blue at sunset. Then he stood, adjusting his coat. "Is there any chance," he asked quietly, "we could start over?" I met his eyes. "We already are." He looked down, nodded once, then turned away toward the door. "Grant," I said before he stepped out. He stopped. "I'm proud of you. Not for what you did, for finally seeing it." He swallowed, then said, "You know, that night at Christmas, when you stood up for yourself, I hated it, but a part of me was proud, too." We both smiled a little. After he left, I stood by the window and watched him walk down the street. He didn't look back, but his shoulders were straighter than before. I picked up the foreclosure letter one last time. The words didn't sting anymore. They were just paper. Then I tore it in half, dropped it in the trash, and turned off the light.
Summer arrived early that year, warm and forgiving. The kind of summer that makes you forget how long winter lasted. My yard was green again. The porch light I'd fixed months ago glowed steady every evening, like it was proud of doing its small job right. Life had gotten simple, the kind of simple I used to mistake for loneliness. But it wasn't lonely. It was mine. I filled my mornings with little things. Coffee on the porch, walks to the hardware store, a few small repair jobs for neighbors. I'd stopped watching the news. It never brought peace. Instead, I listened to old records Lydia used to hum along to. Slow, easy songs about love that lasts and time that heals. One afternoon, while I was oiling the hinges on a back gate, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Grant. "Dad, I found an apartment. It's small, but it's ours. Got a job offer, too. Starts next week. I'd like you to come by, maybe Sunday." I read it twice, then set the phone down and smiled. He didn't ask for money. He asked for time. That was new. On Sunday, I drove across town to a modest apartment complex with faded red bricks and kids' bikes leaning against the railings. Grant was outside, waiting. He looked different. Thinner, tanner, a little older, but something in his face had softened. When he hugged me, it wasn't quick or awkward like before. It was real. Inside, the place was simple. Second-hand furniture, plain curtains, a small dining table with two mismatched chairs. It looked like the kind of beginning people built when they finally learn what matters. "I did it myself," he said, almost shy. "Got the job at a construction firm. It's not fancy, but it's honest." "That's the best kind," I said. He nodded. "I also wanted to say thank you. Not for the money or the house or anything like that. For what you did that night. It woke me up." I looked at him carefully. His eyes were clear. The pride I used to see in him, the kind borrowed from other people's approval, was gone. What was left was quieter, stronger.
We ate lunch together. Sandwiches, cold lemonade, simple, perfect. Afterward, he showed me a photo he kept on the fridge, Lydia holding him as a baby, both smiling at the camera. Madison left before spring, but I think Mom would have stayed proud. She would have. She'd also tell you to clean your sink. That got him to laugh, a real full laugh that made him look young again. When I left that afternoon, he walked me to the truck. The sky was wide and blue, and the air smelled of sun-warmed pine. "Come by next week. I want to cook dinner." "I'd like that," I told him. He smiled, then added, "I don't have fancy plates, but I've got paper ones. Hope that's okay." I laughed. "Son, paper plates are perfect. You can't break what's already simple." When I drove home, the road stretched open and calm ahead of me. I didn't think about the years lost or the money gone. I thought about the porch light waiting for me, the quiet of my own kitchen, and the small truth I'd finally learned. Real family isn't built from perfect traditions or expensive furniture. It's built from people who want you there. When I pulled into the driveway, the sun was setting low, brushing gold across the grass. I sat there for a moment, letting the warmth fill the cab. Lydia's picture hung above the mantel inside, waiting. I'd talk to her later, tell her how the story ended. Peace didn't come loud or proud that night. It came in a whisper, steady, soft, and honest. And for the first time in a long time, I whispered back, "I made it, honey." We both did. Autumn crept in before I realized summer was over. The air carried that faint coolness you only notice when you're standing still. The trees along my street turned shades of gold and rust, scattering leaves that made the ground look like a warm quilt. I'd settled into a rhythm. Quiet mornings, light work in the shop behind the house, dinners that didn't require thought. Life would finally slow down to the pace it was supposed to move. No more checking my phone every hour, no more balancing other people's problems against my own peace. Then one afternoon, as I was sanding down an old oak chair, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a name I hadn't seen in months, Madison. For a second, I almost ignored it. But something made me wipe my hands and pick up. Her voice was smaller than I remembered, tired in a way that money can't fix. "Jack," she said quietly, "I owe you an apology." That was something I never thought I'd hear from her. "I was wrong about you, about everything. Grant told me what you said to him, that peace isn't something you buy. He's doing well now, happier than he's ever been. I wanted to say thank you for giving him that." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. The woman who once measured worth by labels and silver cutlery was now speaking like someone who'd finally met herself. "Madison," I said gently, "I don't hold grudges. Life does a fine job of teaching all of us when it's time to listen." She gave a soft, broken laugh. "It taught me the hard way. My parents won't speak to me anymore. We lost everything. But I think losing everything is the only way I finally saw what mattered." We talked for a few more minutes. Nothing deep, nothing heavy. Just two people standing on opposite sides of the same long story, finally able to look at it without anger. When we said goodbye, it felt like closing a door that didn't need to open again. That night, I sat on the porch with a blanket around my shoulders. The wind moved through the trees in low whispers, and somewhere down the street, a child was laughing. I smiled without meaning to. My phone buzzed once more. A text from Grant. "Dinner Sunday, 5 p.m.,
No excuses. I typed back, wouldn't miss it. When Sunday came, I drove to his apartment again, but this time there was someone else there, a woman I hadn't met before. Kind eyes, gentle voice. Her name was Lily. She and Grant worked together. They weren't rushing things, just letting life move at its own pace. Dinner was simple, chili, cornbread, laughter. No fine china, no rehearsed smiles, just warmth. At one point Lily asked, "Mr. Harmon, do you ever miss your old life?" I thought about it for a moment, about the big houses, the dinners where I never fit in, the years spent mistaken sacrifice for love. Then I shook my head. No, I think I just missed who I used to be before I tried to please everyone. Grant looked at me and smiled quietly. That's what I'm learning now, Dad. After dinner, as I was leaving, he walked me to the truck again. The night air was crisp, and a single yellow leaf drifted between us. "You know," he said, "I've been thinking about starting my own small construction business. Nothing fancy, just honest work. Your mother would love that, and she'd tell you to keep your receipts." He laughed. "You'll help me, right? With advice, I mean?" "Always. Advice is free. The rest you'll earn." He nodded, and for a long moment neither of us spoke. Then he said quietly, "I'm glad you never gave up on me." "I almost did. But love doesn't quit. It just changes shape." He hugged me again, tighter this time. I felt his shoulder shake once, just once, before he let go. When I drove home that night, the moon was high, the sky wide and clear. I turned off the radio and let the silence ride with me. At the house, I stood on the porch for a long while, breathing in the night air. The porch light glowed steady above me. Inside, Lydia's photo caught the moonlight, her smile frozen in that soft, knowing way that said she'd seen all of this coming. I raised my glass of water to her picture. "To second chances," I said softly. And as the leaves rustled in the dark, I realized something simple but certain. Peace doesn't come after revenge. It comes after forgiveness. That's the real inheritance. And I was finally rich again.
Winter returned softer this time, not as an enemy, but as an old visitor who finally learned to knock before entering. Snow rested gently on the roofs instead of burying them. The streets and boulders shone under the streetlights like a quiet apology. I spent those months living the kind of life that used to seem too small for me. Morning walks to the corner bakery, fixing creaky steps from Mrs. Cole down the street, watching cardinals land on the maple tree Lydia planted our first year in this house. Peace wasn't loud anymore. It just existed, like breath, steady and earned. Then one morning in February, I got a letter that made me pause. The return address said Boulder Community College. Inside was an invitation. Quote, "Your son Grant has nominated you for the Community Builders Award in recognition of your lifelong contribution to family, craftsmanship, and character." Unquote. I sat there staring at the paper for a long while. It wasn't about the award. It was about the name, my son, and the words that followed, contribution to family. That evening, Grant stopped by with Lily. They brought dinner, roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, the kind of meal that fills a house with laughter before you even take a bite. Lily handed me the envelope again, smiling. She wanted it to be a surprise, but he's terrible at keeping secrets.
Grant looked embarrassed. They asked if I could write a statement, so I told them the truth, that the best thing you ever built wasn't furniture or houses. It was the example you left for me. I tried to answer, but my throat tightened. Instead, I just reached across the table and squeezed his hand. He didn't pull away. Later that night, when they'd gone home, I sat by the fire. The house glowed gold and quiet around me. On the mantel, beside Lydia's picture, I'd placed a new one, me, Grant, and Lily, taken last week at the park. I poured a glass of whiskey and stared at both frames. The past and the present sat side by side now, not fighting, not competing, just existing together like two pieces of a puzzle that had finally found where they belonged. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and unhurried. I stepped out onto the porch and listened. No engines, no noise, just the sound of snow touching earth. I thought about all the versions of myself I'd been, the father who gave too much, the man who stayed silent to keep peace, the one who finally stood up and said no, and now this one, older, freer, softer. If peace had a sound, it would be this silence. If peace had a face, it would look a lot like forgiveness. I took a long breath and let it out slowly. We did all right, Lydia. Took the long road, but we made it home. The snow kept falling, covering the world in white, making everything look clean again. Not new, but forgiven. And that's how the story ended. Not with revenge, not with triumph, but with something rarer. Peace, steady as a porch light, shining quietly in the dark, reminding anyone who passes by that even broken things can glow again. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the story. Drop a comment telling us your thoughts about this story.